Hello, my name is Jeff Baker. I started working in IT as a developer round about the mid-80s or so, and I still do. Over the years, I've worked mostly on Unix and then many flavours thereof. I've worked on languages, assembler, Ada, C++, and so on. Also, I've worked on various databases. I even worked for some time doing low-level things such as bootstraps, device drivers, job swappers, and so on. I'm pleased to say I've been cured, and I now have friends and a life.
Hello, and if you're thinking about switching to Linux, there are lots of things that you need to consider and think about before jumping in. And you need to decide, is Linux right for me? There are many good things. Only a few of them are covered in this presentation, mainly because it would go on for a hell of a long time if I tried to cover all of them. It is a lot more secure than other options. I'll give you a real life example here. My wife used to run Microsoft Windows, and each day the virus checker would find thousands of virus, malware and all sorts of undesirable things. She did use the web for research, but nothing of a questionable nature. She only did things she needed to do for her job, and it was really getting to her. So I suggested, why not give Linux a try? I've used it, well, Unix since the late 80s, and then various forms leading up to what we have as Linux today. She was reluctant. She really was reluctant. She hates all things tech with an absolute passion. But she found MS ran so slow and she wasted so much of her time rebooting. She hated that every evening after doing a long day's work she had to run and remove viruses and lots of other stuff, knowing only full well that tomorrow would be exactly the same again. She really did not want to learn a new system, but things got so bad for her, she agreed. I introduced her to LibreOffice or OpenOffice. They're very similar, depending on which version of Linux you use, and explained that it does the things that Microsoft Office should do. She already knew Thunderbird, which she uses for her email. Firefox, she also has to read quite a few PMF documents, and found that on Linux it was very easy to do so. I can assure you it was not love at first use. She did love the improvement in the speed. Linux, generally speaking, runs a lot faster on like-for-like equipment than MS does. She loved the fact she didn't need to constantly reboot. In fact, she didn't need to reboot at all for the whole time that she tried Linux, which the intention was just a day or two, but things turned out to be quite significantly longer. And she didn't have to waste her time dealing with viruses, malware and so on, which meant when she finished her work, she had truly finished for the day. That was it. It took a little time to learn that in Linux things are in different places, have different names, and so on, which again made her hesitant and reluctant. And I pointed out that when she changed from XP to Win 7 and Win 7 to Win 10, Microsoft made actually very few changes under the bonnet, or hood as I think Americans say. But they moved everything and changed everything's name and made it look different. And I remember when I was doing that, and I had to fix various problems on Win 7 for people and so on. And it took me ages to find something. When I actually did, and the code started, I thought, that's exactly the same code as ran on XP. All they've done is made it more difficult to find. But anyway, I asked her, well, what's the difference? You've already done it each time you've updated your Windows. And she thought about it, and in credit to her, she does actually take on new ideas and think about them. Even if she doesn't like them at first, she will actually consider them. Eventually, well actually rather quickly, much quicker than I thought anyway, Linux did grow on her. And after a few days she really liked it and decided it was worth her effort to learn. So much so, I never actually got to use my PC again, and it became hers. I had to get a new one, so it was a win-win really. I didn't even need to ask her if I could buy a new PC. Now that is techie heaven. That's one story, but it is a true one. Changing to Linux can have many benefits. However, it may not be the correct choice for you. Linux is not a Mac or MS, and Linux users don't want it to be. .exes or DMGs will not run on Linux. In many cases there are equivalents, and when I say .exes won't run, there is a way of doing it, but it's beyond the scope of this. And if you take a look in our tutorial on VirtualBox and running virtual machines, you'll see it is possible, but it's not necessarily ideal. If you need to use a special piece of software which only runs on MS, stay with MS, really. Unless MS is really doing bad for you, stay with it. Whilst the migration of everything else over to Linux may go easy and enjoyable, if you're stuck with a certain piece of software that you have to use, it may not be so sweet and easy to convert over to Linux. There's a big difference between Linux, MS and Mac. On MS and Apple, the desktop is an integral part of their operating system. They're completely intertwined with each other. You have no choice. You have the MS desktop, you have the MacOS desktop. Linux, the part that does the work, which is the operating system, is completely separate to the desktop. Now that actually gives you quite a few advantages, a lot of advantages actually. There are many desktops, each of them with different looks and feels, highlighting different things, configurable in different ways, and basically you're free to try any desktop you like and stick with one which looks and feels and works good for you. You don't have to reinstall the system to change your desktop, because Linux is sitting underneath the desktop. It stays the same. You can even actually have several desktops loaded and just switch between them, just depending on what mood you're in at the time. Common examples are KDE, or now it tends to be known as Plasma. GNOME is also very common. KDE and GNOME are probably the two most common and widely known. very different in their approach and very different in their look and feel. Cinnamon is available, Mate is available, Budgie used to be available. I'm not sure if it still is or if it's supported anymore. I'm not sure about that one. Alex QT, XFCE, and there are a lot more. They each have their own look and feel, but that's all. It's Linux underneath. Okay. This is something which I find a bit disturbing, and a lot of people who use Linux and have been using Linux for a long time really upsets us. There is no best distribution. Absolutely none. A lot of MS people, oh sorry, camera has not working too well there. I've obviously moved since I set the camera. There is Ubuntu, Red Hat, Fedora, Debian, Mint, and so on and so on and so on. Each one has its own look and feel, each one has its own little tweaks, but there is no best one. And for some reason there's a growing trend to say XXX is better than YYY, or if you're moving from MS then ZZZ is the best. I'm really sorry, but that is complete rubbish, spread by people who clearly do not know what they are saying or doing. By saying this, they are telling you they are clueless. And if they say this, and they're clueless about this, can you trust anything else that they say? It does bring into account their credibility on other things relating to Linux. Okay, there's a small correction here. Some of the distributions have been tailored to meet very specific goals. Example being, some are very lightweight and optimized to run on low power or old PCs. Some have been made to be very, very small and enable them to run from flash drives and so on. But they are the exception, not the rule. Now here's reasons not to switch. If the only reason is to save money, don't. In many cases MS is free or granted on license. Your employers might have a license, your university might have a license, students are granted, some healthcare workers are granted licenses. There's a whole swathe of people who can get MS for free. So if you're only looking to save money and think, Linux is great, it's free, well, MS might be free for you. In which case, saving money is not the reason to change. If gaming is your main interest, whilst many of the games are available, the latest and greatest probably won't be available for a while after they're released. I know a lot of people who do use Linux just for gaming and say it is amazing. They run faster and better and everything else, but there will be a delay before you get the latest and greatest trending title. Also, as I mentioned earlier, if you have to use a special tool which is written only for MS, it will need MS to run. There is no way around that or to change that. There is a way you can run MS, which is in a virtual machine, which is where you have your Linux machine running, and then on top of your Linux it also runs a virtual machine, which is a pretend PC effectively, where you load MS into that pretend PC and then you run the MS application. It gets a little complicated and it's way beyond the scope of this article, but the statement that you can't, if a code is written for MS, it will only run on MS, that statement is absolute. It's just the ways we can get MS to run on Linux. Warning, there are some hardware restrictions. Don't blame Linux for this. Shout at the manufacturers. Linux now is growing in popularity like at a speed that I've never seen before. As I say, I've been involved in Unix of some form or another since middle 80s roughly, and the way that it's growing now is beyond anything we could ever have thought of. HP and Brother are very good to Linux. You can pretty much say any piece of HP kit or Brother kit will support Linux, and it will have proper dedicated drivers and it will work well. Canon and Lexmark, be careful. A lot of their kit does work, but not all of it, so check before you buy it. Now you've got to remember, Linux is a community. You're not dealing with people who are paid to sit in a call centre and do a job and will take any level of abuse because they don't have a choice. Don't shout at us. It's not our fault if it doesn't work. Which means be nice to, well, them, the community, and I include myself, so us. If you do need help and are rude or abusive, remember, most of the help will come from unpaid people who are donating their time. We do not have to help. Being polite will go a long way to getting you the help that you need.
Thank you for taking the time to watch the presentation, which I hope you have found useful. And remember, please subscribe to our channel.